is we are finally getting into drawing graphs, but before we can actually get there, we have to learn about this thing that we draw our graphs on, and that is called the Cartesian plane. Now, I want you guys to maybe use reactions or maybe put a message in the chat. Are we familiar with just the word? Have we heard this word before? The word of Cartesian plane. Okay. I see I'm not, speaking gibberish to you guys because you guys have heard this word, except Liaho. Itandile, that's very, very soon. Good luck. Okay, so we generally know that the Cartesian plane exists. Now, what I want you guys to be very, very aware of is that it is super, super important to know exactly what the Cartesian plane is, how it works, and sort of how you can use the Cartesian plane so that when we get to drawing graphs, our graphs are going to be drawn on this Cartesian plane. So you're not going to be able to understand what is going on if you first don't understand the Cartesian plane. So first things first, the Cartesian plane is a number grid. So, and it says like the one given on the right of this page, which we have down at the bottom. So it is a number grid. You guys know how grids work. I know this. You've done it in maths before, and you probably would have done it in geometry. I'm saying geometry. You can tell I'm a math teacher in geography. And so what we then have, this paragraph says further, the numbers or coordinates on it allow us to locate the exact position or the exact location of a point on the plane. So what it's saying is that at any point, at any given point, there are numbers that will tell us the exact point of this position on the plane. Just like in geometry, when you had, and I don't know why I keep saying geometry, just like in geography, where you have your maps with your coordinate grid and you have coordinates, it's the very same thing in maths where we have coordinates that are going to tell us the exact position of this point on our plane. And so in this Cartesian plane, there is a center point, and we call our center point the origin. And usually we just denote that with a capital letter O. And so the center point is this point right in the middle. Okay, we call it the origin. Two axes, by the way, it's one axis, two axes. Two axes are drawn through the origin to make the Cartesian plane. And when we talk about axes, we're just talking about these lines. So this is one axis, this is another axis. So these two lines have been drawn through my center point to create what we call the Cartesian plane. And so we have these axes are called the x-axis and the y-axis. So my x-axis is horizontal. So that is this axis over here. And we have the y-axis, which is vertical. Now, I always remembered it, and I've told you guys this before. I've always remembered it as y to the sky. So all that it means is that your y-axis is the one that's pointing upwards. So think of if you were to be drawing a picture and you had your sun in the little corner here with your birds. Oh, I have an extra wing on my bird. You know, we all used to draw these pictures. This arrow over here, this axis is pointing upwards towards the sky in our picture. And so that is my y-axis because I tell myself y to the sky. And so by default, the other one has to be x. So far, let me know, use some of your reactions. Are we all good with the Cartesian plane? Are we good with the axes? And are we good with the origin? Cool. Lots of thumbs ups. Thank you, guys. Yeah, who knows it? Great stuff. So if we move on, it says, have a good look at the Cartesian plane pictured. Note that the x-axis has negative values to the left of the origin, and the y-values has negative values below the origin. Now, remember we said that there are numbers, okay? So there are numbers in our Cartesian plane, and really how it works is you can think of it as two number lines. So these axes, literally, I just want you to think of them as two number lines that are crossing each other. And what happens is that at the origin is where zero starts, okay? And think about a normal number line. This looks like a normal number line that we would draw, and it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But we've also now learned about negative numbers. And so that's exactly what it says here, that the x-axis have negative, or it has negative numbers to the left of my origin. And this is where I'm drawing all of these little notches now. And it's going to be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, and -7. So my x-axis has negative numbers on the left of my origin. Now, if we look at this y-axis, well, think of a thermometer, you guys. If this is 0, this is going to be 1. This is going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now, when we are measuring negative temperatures in a thermometer, we're going to have -1, -2, -3, and I'm actually just realized I'm not drawing my negatives anymore. Also, I'm going to put my negatives on this side, just so that we all know my negatives are still there. -3, -4, -5, -6. Okay, so this is now my actual fully completed Cartesian plane. So we have these two number lines, they are numbered, they have crossed, they create this number grid. The center is called the origin, and there my point is 0 on both number lines, both axes. And then they've said here, to specify the position of a point on the Cartesian plane, we use a coordinate. So remember, we said we can use coordinates to show the exact location of a point. And when we use coordinates, we write coordinates in the format x and y. So if we look over here, we write coordinates in the format x. Super important that you have it in brackets. Super important that you have a semicolon in the middle, and then y. Now let's look at how we would do this. If I wanted to write the coordinates for a point A on my graph, how would I do it? Well, let's go and let's do a point over here. Okay? No, I actually want to do it here. Let's do this point. Okay? I have point A. What are the coordinates? Well, I can see the format that my coordinate needs to be in. And what we're going to do is we are going to look for the number on my x-axis, and that is going to be a +2. And what is my y-coordinate? My y-coordinate is going to be a +3. And so there we go, Bree. My coordinates are going to be 2 and 3. Now, what I want you guys to know is that each number itself is called a coordinate, but when you put them together, we usually call them a coordinate pair. So you'll hear this being referred to as a coordinate pair when you put the x and y together, or sometimes people just call it an ordered pair. Okay, it's when you combine your x and your y coordinate together. Okay, and so if we have to look at another example, let's look at point B over here. What are the coordinates for my point B? Well, firstly, I know I want to have brackets. I know I want to have a semicolon in the middle. I know this first number in my brackets has to be my x value. So let's go and let's see. Let's draw this dotted line up until my x-axis, and I see that it gives me -5. And if I am then looking for my, oh, and I didn't realize my bottle is like still here. So we have our x value first, and then if we're looking for our y value, we're drawing the dotted line. Shady, super close. You've swapped your x and y values. This is -4. Remember, x value first always, and then y value. Okay. So that is that, and they've actually said here, for example, the position on the point in the plane has an x value of 3 and a y value of 2. I was actually supposed to do that. I kind of swapped it around. I gave you point A with coordinates 2 and 3, and they've given you 3 and 2, but you guys get the picture. So 3 and 2 would look something like this. This point over here would have the coordinates of 3 and then 2. Okay. Shady, close enough, yes, but it would be marked wrong if you gave me that answer. And then they have lastly told us that my x and y axes divide my Cartesian plane into 4 sections called quadrants. So think quad bike. Quad means 4. So quadrants, we have 4 quadrants on this Cartesian plane. And my quadrants are labeled in an anti-clockwise direction. Now, firstly, what you should know is we label coordinates, no, we label quadrants in Roman numerals. So usually what you'll see is you'll see this one being called I. Now, if you think about it, usually when we draw graphs, this is what we're used to. We're used to doing this and then drawing maybe a bar graph or a line graph. So this is the section that we are used to, okay? Which means this is going to be my first section. Now, we're labeling it anti-clockwise, which means this is going to be quadrant 2. This is going to be quadrant 3. And this is going to be quadrant 4. So remember, we label them in Roman numerals. You will almost never see the quadrants being labeled as 1, 2, 3, and 4 with actual normal numbers. But you will see them being used, or rather being numbered with Roman numerals. So this is really everything you need to know about our Cartesian plane. It's really just 2 number lines crossing each other through that origin where my coordinates are 0 and 0. When we have any point on this Cartesian plane, we can combine an x and y coordinate to make a coordinate pair to tell me the exact location of a point. And then we have our quadrants, which starts with quadrant 1 in our upper right quadrant, and then we number it anti-clockwise using Roman numerals. Do we have any questions so far on this Cartesian plane? None that I'm seeing. Let us go and try something. So I am going to do point A. I'm going to do point B. I'm going to do point J, and I'll do point F. And then I'll take hands for you guys to tell me the coordinate points or the coordinate pairs of all of these points on our graph. So if I'm looking at A, how am I going to figure out what is A's coordinates? Remember, we are always using this format, X and Y. So X first, then Y, always in brackets, always with a semicolon in the middle. Okay, so let's look at this. If I have to draw a line down here to my x-axis, I get to -10 for point A. So immediately point A is going to have an x value of -10. But what about its y value? The y value is going to be 2. Okay? So that is how we got to A's coordinates. We draw this line down to my x-axis. Remember, your x-axis is this horizontal axis. And if I could have drawn a straight line, that would have been great. There we go. Your x-axis is this horizontal axis. So you always want to see what number am I on top or above, what number am I above or below on that axis that is going horizontally. That's always going to be your first number. And then you're going to look at the axis that is going vertically, and you're going to look at the number there. So these are my coordinate points for A. If I now look at B, so we have B, which is up here again. I want to go down always to my x-axis first. Hi, Kia. Glad that you have joined us. X-axis first, always. We're going to go to 6. If I now look at my y value for point B, I see that is a +10. Okay, so those are my coordinates for A and B. Now, if we have a look at C, and I kind of want to skip a line, but that's going to get super crowded. So let's, oh, and I'm not doing C, but let's leave it for C. We have, what's the last letter here? A, B, C, D, we have E, we have F, we have G, we have H, we have I, we have J, and I'm not seeing a K. Okay. I think I just had a hand. No. Okay, cool. So that is now coordinate point B. Let us look again at, and I kind of, yeah. So that's coordinate point B. I'm now going to do J. So J is down here. Let's look at J. Remember, guys, we always want to show our X value first. This axis over here is my X axis. So I'm literally going to draw a dotted line from my point J up until I meet my X axis. And this line that I meet is right in the middle here of -6 and -8. So can you guys tell me what would be in between -6 and -8? 100% Shady. It would be -7. Good, Bree and Uma. So we have -7 over there. Now, if I want to look at my y value, now I can go to this axis over here. And what is going to be in between -4 and -5? I mean, I gave you the answer. It is -5. Cool. So that is J. It's not so bad. You just have to get in the habit of always putting your X value first. It is wrong if you swap them. They mean completely different things. For example, if I had said 2 and -10, I want to show you guys where that point would actually be. 2 would be 2 on my x-axis, so that would be here. And then -10 would be all the way down here on my y-axis. So this is where this point would be of 2 and -10. Do you see how different that is from A over there? Super different. So do not make that mistake and confuse your X and Y value. It's allowed to count in 2s when doing the Cartesian plane, or like 3s. Yes, so you can count in any intervals you want, Bree, but you always want to use your discretion, because obviously you want to be able to get to the numbers that you need to on your Cartesian plane. So if you're going to go in intervals of 100, it's obviously not going to make sense if you have to plot points like 5 and 6, right? So if you were going to 22, you could you could very much count in twos, 0, 2, or 6 up until 22, as long as all of your intervals are even. So you can't count in twos on your y-axis and then all of a sudden you're counting in fives on your x-axis. They must both be in the same intervals. So if you're counting in ones, you must count in ones on both of your axes. If you're counting in twos, count in twos on both axes, fives, tens, however many you're going to count in whatever your interval is that you choose. So that is J. And now the last one I'm going to do is going to be F. So if we look at point F over here, remember, we are trying to find the coordinates of F. We always want my X value first. This is my X-axis that I've highlighted in green. So I'm going to draw this dotted line up to my X-axis, and what number do I get? I get a positive 2. Now I need my y value. My y value, I'm going to draw my dotted line to my y-axis. It gives me a negative 4. Always with a semicolon in between, always in brackets. Cool. So that is that. Now that I've done that, I'll give you guys a chance to raise hands if you would like to answer. When you are answering, I want you guys to tell me open brackets, whatever your x value is, semicolon, your y value, close brackets. I want you guys to practice putting it in brackets using that semicolon because it's super, super important to get used to it. So let us go ahead and see. So Bree, hi.
Hi, ma'am. Can I please do number I?
Sure you can. Did I just close? Yes, I did. I
Yes,
just
we did.
I just closed Word. I mean, OneNote. Why did I do that? Apologies, guys. I'm gonna share it super quickly again. There we go. You guys should see my screen again.
Yes, ma'am. So,
Okay, yes, Bree. You said I. Uma, you can
yeah.
answer in the chat, but after I've taken everybody's hands, I'll talk to you. Okay, Bree, let's go.
So it's gonna be open brackets.
Mm-hmm.
8 is 2, which is semicolon.
8, yes, because this is my x value, correct? Semicolon.
Is to negative 2.
Negative 2. So you don't have to say is 2 because it's not a ratio. Remember, with a ratio, it's just this colon here. That is when you say is 2. So you don't actually have to say is 2 here. You can just say 8 semicolon negative 2. So if you're reading it, you would literally just say 8 and negative 2.
Okay, and then close brackets.
Close brackets. Thank you very much, Bree.
Okay, ma'am.
Let's see who's next. We have Itandile next. Yep.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi. Which one would you like to do?
Can I please do H?
H, okay. So that's this point over here. Tell me what to do, Itandile.
We do a bracket.
Mm-hmm.
We open bracket. And we write our x value, which is 2, semicolon, positive 6, my y-axis, close bracket.
Are you sure it's positive 6?
Positive 5, ma'am, sorry.
Positive 5, great. Because we didn't exactly go on 6, we went in that middle over there. And then close brackets. Beautiful, Itandile. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, ma'am.
Okay, how many do we have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, and I see the next 3 hands up, and then I'll take Uma. So Shady, yes. Which one would you like to do?
Hi, ma'am. Can I please do C?
For sure. Tell me, what am I doing?
Open brackets.
Mm-hmm.
Negative 8.
Beautiful, because that's my x value.
Semicolon,
Mm-hmm.
-3.
-3, right? Because if we go here, we land right in the middle, and that would be
Close brackets.
-3. Beautiful, Shady. Oh, yes, I did that for you. My bad. Thank you, Shady.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hey, Emithle, you are next. Which one would you like to do?
Ma'am,
Hi.
I would like to do number E, ma'am.
Okay, let's go. So we have E over here.
So our x value is going to be negative negative 1, ma'am. Wait, is 1
-1 or 1?
1, ma'am.
1. Beautiful.
And then our y value is going to be negative 5. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
negative 5.
And what am I missing to finish up this coordinate pair?
The brackets and the semicolon, ma'am.
Brackets and a semicolon. Thank you very much, Emithle.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I see you chose E. That was your initial. And then Zach. Yes, Zach. I haven't heard from you in so long.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi. Which one would you want to do? D or G?
G, please.
G. Okay, where's G? I'm looking for it. There we go. Okay. What am I doing, Zach?
So first you would open the brackets,
Beautiful.
and then your x value would be -7.
100% -7. And then?
After that, you would put the semicolon there,
Mm-hmm.
and then your y value would be 8, +8.
100%. Thank you very much, Zach.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Oh, you're right. Um. Oh, act like you didn't see that. And then Omar, you are up in the chat. You wanted, well, you didn't want to do D, but D is what's left for you. Tell me, what am I doing, Omar? Do. Omar, are you with me? Okay, there we go. So Omar is saying -8 and -8. Let's check. Okay, so I'm going -8 and -8. Let's check. We have, which one was that? D. So we have D over here. We first want to do our x value. 100%, my x value takes me up to -8. And if I look for my y value, we are -8 as well. Open brackets, close brackets, semicolon in between. Cool. So this is now, we've now done a lot of naming these points on the Cartesian plane. So I hope that if we gave you these coordinates, you also should be able to go in and draw these coordinates on the plane, or on the coordinate plane, or on the Cartesian plane, whatever it is that you learn about it at school, whatever it is that you talk about. As long as you're able to work around it and work with it, you will be good when you're drawing graphs. Now, maybe give me like some reactions. Let me know, how are we doing with this so far, with drawing points and naming points on our Cartesian plane. Coordinates, x coordinates, y coordinates, putting them together to make a coordinate pair. Cool. Lots of thumbs ups. So before our brain break, I want us to do this. So as we see here, it says today we are going to draw some graphs, and I always fail to proofread. Today we are going to draw some graphs, but to do this, a table is going to be helpful. Now remember, when we spoke about relationships, we said that there can be one relationship, but many ways to represent them. So now we're looking at how we represent these relationships using a graph. But firstly, we'll normally be given an equation first. And it's really difficult to be able to draw a graph straight from an equation. So what we usually do is we usually represent this relationship using a table first, and then we put it into a graph. So I'm going to show you guys how we do this. So we've been given this equation over here that says y is equals to x plus 1. Now, what I want you guys to know is, remember, my y is basically my it's basically my dependent variable. It's my output. Okay, so remember what we said. We said our output, which is our y values, usually go at the bottom of our table, and my input, which is my x values, go at the top. And if you were here for last week's lesson, what I said is, when you are doing a table, you get to pick your inputs. If you have a table that's blank, you get to pick your inputs. But you want to pick your inputs very strategically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go -1. No, and I'm actually going to go -2, -1, 0, +1, and +2. Why did I choose these inputs? I've chosen these inputs because I need to keep in mind my goal is to put this onto a graph eventually. I know now my x values are basically going to be my x coordinates on my graph. So when I'm doing this, I want to have both negative values and positive values of x. Does that make sense, you guys? Please use reactions. Let me know, because this is a super important step that I don't want you guys to sort of skim past. I see hands. Let me take those hands in the meantime. Itandile, yes, your hand is up.
Can you please, why did you pick these numbers instead of others? Or are we allowed to pick other numbers, or they give us numbers?
Okay. So usually what happens is you are allowed to pick the numbers. When they've just told you, they've given you an equation and they've told you to draw the graph, usually you get to pick the numbers. Sometimes they will give you the table and they will put inputs on the top, and then you don't have to worry about that because they've chosen the inputs for you, right? But when they haven't, you get to pick the input. So I could have picked any number I wanted. But remember what I said, we want to pick it strategically. I don't want to pick 1,000, okay? I don't want to pick 1,000 because remember, my input is my x value. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what I want you to know is that when we convert this into a Cartesian plane, into a graph on my Cartesian plane, what we actually do is we take these inputs and we take these outputs and we combine them to make a coordinate pair. So we have literally an x and y that we put together and it makes a coordinate. And then I have to draw that coordinate on my Cartesian plane. Now, can you imagine if I chose this input of 1,000, what I would have to number my graph? Like I would be numbering my graph for ages, right? To get to a value of 1,000. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So I wanted to pick my numbers strategically. I didn't have to pick these numbers specifically, but why I picked it is because, like I said, because I'm using the Cartesian plane, I want to have x values that are going to be negative and that are going to be positive. And so by picking these numbers, I had two numbers that were negative. I had two numbers that were positive. And my numbers are going here, you can see, in intervals of 1. So
Okay.
everything worked out pretty neatly like this, but I didn't have to pick these. And that's exactly what I was trying to avoid. I didn't have to pick these numbers. I could have picked, I could have gone -10, -5, 0, 5, and 10. It doesn't even have to be in evil. Yeah, English is passing me today. It doesn't, sorry. It does not even have to be in even intervals. I could have still had this as 1 and 2. But what you'll see, and as you start to do this often, you'll start to see that it's a lot easier when you do it in sort of counting in fives. You pick your inputs counting in fives or counting in twos or counting in ones. But you can pick any. All that's going to happen is when you do your dots, let's say it's going to be something like this, okay? Because you've skipped all of these numbers here between 5 and 0, it's going to be like a big blank space here. But it's fine because when we draw graphs, all we're doing is we're connecting the dots. So even though all my dots were missing here, having 4 or 5 points that we've drawn is more than enough. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Okay. I sort of went ahead of myself explaining the graph, but if you didn't understand what I was doing, don't stress. -2, -1. Oh, and this was 1 and 2. So let us look at this. When I have this input of -2, let's see what happens. I have my input of -2. My output is going to be, and this is then going to be -2 plus 1. Can you guys tell me what is -2 plus 1?
-1.
-1. Yes. Yeah, I didn't mean to say it. And then if we have an input of -1, it's going to be -1 plus 1. What is my output going to be then?
0, ma'am.
0, right? When I have my output of 0, it's going to be 0 plus 1. What's my output going to be here?
1, ma'am.
1.
Thank you, guys. And when I have my output of 1 and 2, tell me what you guys are getting.
2, ma'am.
2 and 3,
2,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay, so this is 2 and this is 3. So you guys are 100% correct. So we have -1, we have 0, we have 1, we have 2, and we have 3. Now what I want you guys to see is, and like I said, I went a little bit ahead of myself explaining the graph. What we have is we have X and we have Y values. What we do is we group them. When my X value is -2, my Y value is -1. When my X value is -1, my Y value is 0. When my X value is 0, my Y is 1. And so we literally group them and they become our coordinate pairs that we have to now draw on our graph. So first things first, I'm going to label my graph X and Y. I am going to number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm just gonna go 2, 4, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is going to be -2, -4, -6, and then this is going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is -1, -2, -4, -6. That's negative. That's negative. Okay. I've now numbered my Cartesian plane. Now, all that I do is I now have to go and sort of see what are my coordinates that I have to draw on this graph. So firstly, it's sometimes easier if you just draw your coordinates out, -2 and -1. So -2 and -1, -1 and 0, 0 and 1, 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3. Now use your reactions, guys, and let me know, are we all happy with how I numbered my Cartesian plane and with how I got my coordinates that I need to draw from my... Cool. Sherry, I think you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, now that we've got that, all we have to do is draw these points. Remember, it's always my X value first, then my Y. So to get -2, it's going to be here on my X axis. -1 is going to take me down, and I'm going to have to erase my numbering here because this is that point I'm looking for. -2 and -1. Then we have -1 on my x-axis, which is going to be here. And then it is going to be 0. And 0 is right on this line. So that is going to be that. Then we have 0. And so 0 on my x-axis is going to be here. So this is where my mouse is right now. That is where 0 is at. But then we need a y value of 1, which is going to take me up to here. And then we are going to have x value of 1, y value of 2, takes me up here, x value of 2, y value of 3. I've now drawn all of my points. So Itandile, I hope you can see, based on these inputs that I've chosen, it gives me these dots in a neat little line over here that now I can just join up and call it my graph. You could have picked any numbers, but obviously you want to pick numbers that are easy to draw within your Cartesian plane. And you could have used bigger intervals if you wanted your dots to be more spaced out. So I could have gone -4, -2, 0, 2, 4. It just all depends on what your preference is. Now, when you draw your graph, you want to literally join up your dots, and that's that. And then you're going to put arrows at the end of your line just to show that this graph continues on and on and on. We are just not able to draw the whole thing. And this is your graph. And when you are required to label it, you can label this graph y is equals to x plus 1. So you can label your graph with the equation for that graph. Are we all happy with how we got here? We have now officially drawn a graph. And I know we're all tired. We are heading into our brain break now.
Ma'am, why
Yes.
do they call it a linear expression? Or a linear term?
Okay, it's a linear expression because, as you can see, when it brings us into a graph, when we create a graph, it gives us a straight line. So when you hear about a linear graph, it's really just a graph that has a straight line. Sometimes you'll hear people call it a straight line graph.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Pleasure. Let us try and finish this. So we have, let me use green. We have y, no, we have x going on the top. We have y going in the bottom. I am not going to spend my time solving. I'm just going to pick my inputs. Let's pick my inputs now as -2, no. And I'm going to go -4, -2, 0, 2, and 4. Okay, so Itandile, now I've chosen a different interval. Okay, now let me think. When my x is -4, it's going to be 3 times -4, which is going to give me -12. -12 minus 2 gives us what?
Ma'am,
Mm-hmm.
can you please repeat?
Okay, so remember we're substituting in -4. So 3 times -4 is -12 minus 2. -12 minus 2 gives me what?
-14.
-14. -14. Okay, let's try it with 2 now. It's going to be 3 times -2, which is -6. -6 minus 2 gives us what?
-6 minus 2. It gives us -8.
-8. Beautiful. Thank you, Brie, as well. Okay, 3 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 2 gives us what?
-2.
-2. We have 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 minus 2 gives us what?
+4.
4 times 3 is 12. 12 minus 2 gives us what?
10.
10. And I see you guys in the chat. Thank you very much for helping. Now, let's look at what my coordinates are. Remember, my coordinates, we put them in pairs of x and y. So they are going to be -4 and -14. And so can you see now, Itadila, I've chosen values where I need to be able to fit -14 in. So I need to remember that now when I'm numbering my graph. I need to be able to fit in negative 14. Then we have negative 2, negative 8. We have 0, we have negative 2. We have 2, we have 4. And we have 4 and 10. Now, I see all my coordinates here. I know I need to get to negative 14 on my y-axis. So immediately I'm going to number them in 2 intervals. So negative 2, negative 4, negative 6, negative 8, negative 10, negative 12, and negative 14, which means I need to go positive 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. Let us label our x-axis. It is going to have to be in 2s because that is what I've done with my, and by the way, we label our axes. That's what I've done with my y. So 8, 10, 12, 14. Then we have, okay, how do I do this? Negative 2, negative 4, negative 6, negative 8, negative 10, negative 12, and negative 14. Itandile, tell me, are you okay? Do you understand why I've numbered this the way I've numbered it?
Yes, ma'am, I do understand.
Okay, cool. Now I'm going to draw in my points. So I'm going to go negative 4 on my x-axis because always x first and then y. So negative 4 and then down to negative 14. That's my first point. Then we have negative 2 again on my x-axis. And now I'm going down to negative 8. That is over here. Then we're going to 0 on my x-axis, which is right in the middle. And then we are going to negative 2 on my y down here. Okay, positive 2 on my x-axis, but I'm going up to 4 on my y. And then lastly, 4 on my x-axis, but all the way up to positive 10. Do you see, Itandile? I've used different intervals, so my dots are a little bit further apart than what they were before, but they still give me this nice, neat little line that I can join.
Yes, ma'am.
Cool. If I were to label this, I would go y is equals to 3x minus 2.